Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you. We are so glad to have you with us, and we begin yet another engaging session on connecting the dots. First and foremost, we extend our gratitude to our esteemed speakers for their participation in this panel discussion. Shivani Malhotra, partner and MD at Positive Vibes Consulting Private Limited. Dr. Devjani Roy, Chief People Officer at Valior Fabtex Private Limited. Srirang Tarte, Head HR and Strategy at GSM Consulting Inc. A warm welcome to all. As organizations around the world seek to adapt to changing workplace dynamics, one of the most compelling experiments to emerge is the 4-day work week. What began as a bold attempt to improve work life balance and boost productivity has now expanded globally, with companies from various industries and regions exploring this alternative work structure. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on this insightful topic, the 4-day work week experiment, global lessons learned. To know more about HRA and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. I now take the privilege of introducing our moderator for this session, Mr. Vivekanand Kadukuntla, Learning Lead at Pegasystems. Vivek is a distinguished professional in the field of learning and development. He currently serves as the learning lead at Pegasystems, where he designs and implements innovative learning programs across multiple regions and business units. With about 23 years of experience spread across organizations such as Noah Solutions, CA, Convergys, NGA, HR, and Prolifix, he is passionate about helping individuals and organizations reach their full potential through continuous learning. Vivek recently completed the prestigious Future CHRO program at the Indian School of Business, which has further enhanced his strategic HR leadership capabilities. His commitment to creating a culture of continuous learning and his ability to measure the impact of training initiatives makes him a valuable asset to any organization. To know more about Vivek, you can follow him on LinkedIn. The link has been shared in the chat window. Without wasting much time, I hand over the platform to Vivek. Over to you.
Thank you, Faisal, for that wonderful introduction and reminding me what all we have accomplished. Occasionally, unless there is a reminder, we also tend to forget what we did over the years. And it's a privilege to be part of this panel discussion and webinar. Thank you very much to you, and thank you very much for the HR Association of India for organizing such events. It definitely helps us to get closer as professionals and also explore some of these topics which can be considered as thought leadership for us to see how we can move the overall people agenda forward as well. With that, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the today's webinar hosted by HRIA. Our topic that we are talking about as part of this Let's Connect the Dots series is the 4-day workweek experiment, a global experiment, and what lessons we can learn from that. We do have an exciting panel of experts who will share their insights and experience on this transformative topic. But let me introduce one panel speaker at a time before we jump into the overall conversation and questions. Let me start with Srirang Thate. He's the head HR and strategy, JSM Consulting Inc., Princeton from New Jersey. With 27 years of cross-industry experience in engineering, automotive, chemical, staffing, and IT services, Srirang is a dynamic leader who has successfully bridged technical expertise with innovative HR strategies. He's driven impactful initiatives across talent acquisition, OD, and employee engagement. An alumnus of Symbiosis Institute of Business Management with dual masters in operations and human resources, he is also a fellow of the World HR Board and an active member of global HR forums. Recognized as a global laureate in human resource by the prestigious Laureate Assembly Federation 2025, Srirang is a respected thought leader in the HR community. And on top of that, he is joining us from the US, which is like early in the morning, 5 or 6 o'clock. Thank you very much for your enthusiasm and interest to share your opinions and throw more light on this webinar, Srirang. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Vivek.
Let me also take the pleasure to introduce Shivani Malhotra. She is the founder of Positive Vibes Consulting here with us today. Shivani is an award winning HR and learning specialist with over 20 years of experience in senior HR roles across Indian and multinational companies such as DCM Shriram, Yum Brands, and KPMG. An MBA from Symbiosis Center for Management and HRD, which is SCM HRD Pune. Shivani founded Positive Vibes Consulting in 2017, specializing in HR strategy, leadership development, and organization design. Renowned as a HR thought leader, leadership coach, and people strategy expert, Shivani's dedication to excellence has positioned her as a trusted mentor. She also has received numerous awards for her contribution in the field of HR, learning, and OD. Shivani, welcome to the panel, and it's a privilege to have you as part of this conversation to learn more about the topic today.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for the rather illustrious introduction and generous introduction. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on this panel with my accomplished co-panelists. Looking
Welcome.
forward.
Thank you. Let me take the pleasure to introduce the third panelist, Dr. Devjani Roy, Chief People Officer, Value of Aptex Private Limited. Dr. Devjani is an industry stalwart and domain expert in the field of human resources with over 25 years of functional experience across companies such as Nalco, Bharti, HCL Tech, Bentley Systems, Kioni, and SRL Diagnostics, which is part of the Fortis Group. Until March 2019, her last full-time assignment was with SRL Diagnostics as CHRO, where she was also the HR strategic partner at the board. With a degree in organization behavior from FMS, Delhi University, Dr. Devjani has earned an established reputation as one of the most progressive HR business leaders, providing transformative people leadership across industries. Awarded multiple times among the business and HR fraternities as one of the country's most dynamic HR managers, Devjani has recently branched out on her own, choosing the advisory and mentor role for herself going forward. Dr. Devjani, thank you very much for joining us today and welcome to the panel.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Very kind words. Hope I'm able to live up to them.
We are completely confident in all the panelists and their opinions that we are talking about. And the topic itself is like that because we are diving into the concept of the 4-day work week, a topic that has gained significant attention globally. Nevertheless, we'll explore various aspects today, including reactions to the recent statements by some of the Indian leaders advocating for longer weekends, longer work weeks, specific experiments with the 4-day work week, predictions about the future of work, and also the impact on costs, employee well-being, and the potential side effects like moonlighting per se. This discussion aims to provide a comprehensive understanding of the global lessons learned and how they can be applied in the Indian context as well. So with that understanding, let's start the discussion with our, some set of questions that I prepared. We'll call out the name of the panel and then see if we can take their inputs and insights into how we are shaping this up. Dr. Devjani, we'll start with you. This is a topic, something which has definitely sent a lot of ripples across the Indian market when recently some of the leaders have advocated for 70 hours and 90-hour work weeks, sparking significant debate, I would say. The debate has nevertheless highlighted different opinions on work-life balance. How do you think these statements impact the conversation around work-life balance in India?
Thank you, Vivek. I think that's quite a tricky one to start off the conversation, but nevertheless, absolutely in place. Because when people like Narayan Murthy and S.N. Subramaniam make statements like 70 to 90-day work week will spell better economic growth and productivity amongst the current workforce, we are shaken up in our seats and we start thinking that the proverbial conflict that we've always spoken about and always looked at with multiple perspectives, that is it a question of quality or is it a question of quantity? That's a very simplistic way of putting it forward, but nevertheless there are multiple nuances and extremely important and critical insights into this whole discussion as we go along, because we're talking about productivity versus overwork. Basically that's what it's all about, because when we talk about shorter work week, it basically means less number of hours that we give in to work at the workplace. Nevertheless, it doesn't implicate that we don't work for the rest of the time, but probably we work a little differently. Maybe the whole concept of productivity is to be understood in a different way, because it is not just a question of performance and targets, it's not just a question of economic growth, but it's also about that human being who is the catalyst behind creating that growth, that productivity, and the performance levels. Now, how do we, I mean, are we going to go back to the Industrial Revolution times where human resource was considered to be a piece of cattle, and, they were forced into drudgery and looked at as just a way of, getting work and labor out of them? We've come a long way. So when we hear concepts like, oh, a 70 to 90-day work week, it's sort of, I mean, I get a little bit of goosebumps, because I don't know whether to feel happy, whether to feel enlightened, or whether to actually think like, are we going back in time? Or should we be looking at more progressive ways of how to bring about better quality work at the workplace in a manner where I come into work as a happy worker and I go back home feeling satiated rather than filled with stress and trouble? So, it's a dilemma of a royal kind. Because if you look at the positives, there, people will vouch. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Narayan Murthy, Mr. Subramaniam spoke about it, because they thought the economic growth for their organizations was uppermost. That's the most important concept when it comes to working, because everything has a commercial relevance. That's the reason why organizations exist. But on the other hand, when the Harsh Goenkas and the Anand Mahindras tore open those debates, and globally it was actually opened up with even an Elon Musk pitching it into it, they talked about the well-being, the fact that, stress automatically, and this is vouched by a Gartner study, which has also been highlighted in an HBR issue, that when you are under stress and when you are filled with mental illness because of the kind of work vagaries that you carry, it often translates into number of very expensive mistakes, accidents, and so on and so forth. Now, when that happens, again, it's the workforce which is to be blamed. But nobody goes back to say that, have we provided adequate security measures? Have we provided that support system so as to be able to nurture the human force, the workforce, with those elaborate work hours? So this is a larger than life question. I feel that we need to go deep into it, probably investigate it much further, and look at not the tried and tested solutions, but possibly look for some other kind of solutions which are a little softer around the edge, so that we can have a win-win in the balance. That's about it, Vivek, for now.
Wonderful, Devjani. Thank you very much for highlighting the quality versus quantity, productivity versus overwork. Those are definitely key elements, and I'm glad you also brought it up from a well-being point of view. But globally, there are trends toward shorter work weeks. People are experimenting and understanding how they work, and looks like there are some promising results as well. But
Mhm.
as a country, not with respect to a particular leader or a particular organization, but how do you think India stands on work hours compared to global trends as well? Are we there yet? Or we need to look at some other elements that can help us to be prepared with aspects like that?
Vivek, just to continue from where I left off right now, India as an organization, 90% of the workforce almost is still in the unorganized sector. Okay, we don't boast of policies and support systems which can really take care of concepts such as wellness, such as mental well-being, such as the physical and the mental coming to an equal foundation. We're just about scratching the surface. But if it comes to a real, the real picture, 30% of the workforce are in MSMEs, startups, and the rest of the people who are given to even more than 70 to 90 work hours. But do we have the kind of support systems like better wages? Do we have support systems like, providing them with the right kind of softer policies, which can at least help them when they are burning out? We probably don't. 15% of our labor force is still in agriculture, and we have nothing called better pay and better wages in that segment, which is still dominated primarily by the middlemen. So when we look at India as an economy, we have a dichotomy. We have a burgeoning economic sector with the industries coming forth. We also have the traditional bit, which is still struggling to make both ends meet. In such a scenario, I'm not too sure whether an extended work life is really the solution as propounded by the larger, industry honchos. I would also say that shorter work weeks, we need to possibly get our act in place in order to understand that while we go in for reduction in labor work or hours, we also need to make sure that we put the productive metrics in place so that we don't take our eyes off the productivity quotient. So it is something where there needs to be primarily a lot of work going in. So in India, we need the intelligence here from both corners, whether it is the industry, whether it is the academia, and also the traditional work spots, where we need a lot more progressive work, a lot more policy making initiatives, right at the apex level to take care of these problems at a national level if we need to really collide with the global semantics. But right now, I don't think we are still yet prepared.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. A lot of numbers and analysis definitely helps us to understand the stance on where we are right now today. But to provide more information on some of these experiments that we are talking about, let me move to Shivani. Several countries and organizations have been experimenting or have experimented with this reduced work week, 4 days or 3 days, etc. Some results are very positive, some results are still in the lab, let's say. But can you share some examples of these experiments and their outcomes? How are they shaping up?
Sure, Vivek. I think in the times of leaders talking about 70 hours and 90 hours work week, this is a very fresh, breath of air that is coming our way. My compliments to HREI for, selecting such a, I would say, a very offbeat topic that is, than what is usually discussed in a lot of panel discussions. Um, Work weeks, reduced work weeks, of course, there have been some very fascinating pilots around the world, that provide us with very strong evidence on how the 4-day work week can be implemented effectively. If we were to, look at Western countries like Iceland, I think Iceland was the one which was probably the first one that started this experiment. And between 2015 and 2019, Iceland, in fact, ran one of the world's largest trial with over almost 2,500 workers in the public sector, and the results were very remarkable. And following the success, they saw that there was neither a reduction in the productivity, either the productivity remained the same, or some of the people, they experienced a lot of enhancement in the productivity with reduced working hours. So, following this success, 86% of Iceland's workforce now has the option to work reduced hours without a pay cut. Similar, pilot was done in the UK as well in the year 2022, where they, involved about 61 companies across sectors, and those were all mixed sectors like tech, manufacturing, education, and many others. And after 6 months, 92% of the participating companies decided to stick with the new schedule, which was reduced working hours. Because the employers again found that the productivity was either maintained or it actually improved. And the employees reported, better job satisfaction, mental health, and an overall sense of well-being, and a greater sense of engagement with the company. Likewise, there have been trials in Japan, where a 4-day work week was introduced way back in 2019, where they gave employees basically a Friday off. So this was about a shorter work week again. So this again saw a 40% increase in the productivity. And New Zealand, a country that we often idolize with the ideal work-life balance. Again, 4-day work week they tested in 2018, and based on these results, they've actually made that policy permanent now. We all know about that. Now, Vivek, while I've spoken about the trends globally, I think the bigger question is that why is it working there, and why it is a challenge for an economy like India? When I did a little bit of research in terms of why it is working there, what I could make out was, I think the fundamental reason why a 4-day work week or a shorter work week is, being successful in the Western world is primarily, a difference in the culture. The workplace culture there focuses on the output and not on the hours, unlike us. So many Western countries, they prioritize outcomes over optics because employees are trusted to deliver results without the need for constant supervision or long hours. Of course, there is also higher, level of automation and tech adoption because with better access to automation and digital tools, many roles can actually, be maintained with a better productivity level, even with fewer working days. And of course, like I said, the overall approach towards having a better work-life mindset. So there's a cultural emphasis on personal time, on mental health, on family time, which makes shorter week works a natural extension of those values. Now, if I flip that and see that why is this challenging in India? I would again, speak the opposite, which is again the main point here is about culture. Because in many Indian workplaces, and believe me, I've seen this. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced this. People who are on the call as audience also, where being busy is equated with being productive, and there is still a very heavy bias towards being present. I mean, look at companies after COVID. While there are companies that have moved on to a hybrid role permanently, but majority of the companies have mandated employees to come back to office. And so I think it's more of the hustle culture that we propagate. I think that's one of the main challenges. It's a mindset issue. Having said that, I would also give some credit to the kind of economy that we are. See, we are a service-oriented economy, and we have global clients. So, with many Indian businesses, especially in the IT and BPOs, they serve clients across different time zones. So, requiring round-the-clock availability becomes a mandate there. So, of course, in such sectors, implementing a shorter work week would be an issue. But I think one thing that we all must remember is that we're in a country where majority of the population is still blue collar, people who are dependent on daily wages to earn their livelihood. Now, having a shorter work week there absolutely does not make sense. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things where where we find it challenging. But having said that, again, there are companies in India as well. For example, there is an IT firm, in New Delhi, which piloted a four and a half day work week where they allowed half Fridays off, and they saw success in that. But again, it was an IT services company. The nature of the work was such that they could afford to have a 4.5 day work week, and the results were amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Shivani, for that. Looks like you definitely did a lot of research. Thank you for enlightening us with the observations of Iceland, UK, Japan, etc. Really insightful. To the later part of that response that you provided, let me move to Srirang and understand his perspective as well. There definitely have been challenges in implementing shorter work weeks across the globe as well. It could be adjusting workflows, it could be managing client expectations, it could be the culture, the mindset. But if we want to move to that model, what do you think are some potential challenges that Indian companies might face right now, Srirang? Given your experience across India and US as well, is there anything that you observe, that is out there which can be important for us to consider as we make this progress?
Yeah, thank you, Vivek, for the question. Um, Before I come to the view, I just want to go back to probably until mid 90s. That's where the industrial sector in India was at the boom, or that's how we were recognized all over the world, right? And I remember most of the households in India had a 1 day off. It could be a Thursday or a Sunday. Thursdays, I come from Pune, Maharashtra. So most of the Thursdays, there is to be a load shedding. So the industrial workforce usually used to have off on a Thursday. And then Sundays was reserved for probably staff people, admin operations guys. So um, come to late 90s, early 2000, with the IT revolution that happened in India, suddenly it became like a 5 day week, 2 days off, Saturday, Sunday became like a norm. And we are living in that norm for last almost, I would say, at least 30, 35 years, right? So the first shift that happened from a 6-day week to a 5-day week took almost probably 40-45 years. I'm talking purely from the Indian context, right? And but today, I mean, in last like 25 years since we are working on a 5-day week, we are today talking of a 4-day week. So the shift, if you look at it, from taking 40-50 years to coming to a 5-day work to now in 25 years, I won't be surprised that in the next 10 years we are discussing a 3-day or a 2-day week also. uh, so that's that these are possibilities. That's what I see, honestly. um, if we adjust it from a 6 days week to a 5-day week, there are, there are possibilities all available, and these countries are doing it. There are corporations, there are organizations who are meaningfully involved in trying to bring that work life balance, or allocating the work schedules for people, so that this could become a achievable task. Okay. um, Again, coming back to the 5-day work week, when it was introduced, I don't think most of us questioned it, right? We actually enjoyed it. We thought that, okay, it's a 5-day week. I'm going to get 2 days of weekly off. And on top of it, the vacation days and the holidays, that the organization provides. What we realized over a period of time when we started in that model was that what work I used to do for 6 days got shrink to 5 days. And we still accepted it. We thought, okay, that's fine, because the motivation was the 2 days of off, like a weekly off that we are getting, and people look forward to it. So for a country like India, it worked wonderfully, because the money came back into the market. If we talk of economics, because people started coming out, they started spending, and that's why we see so many multiplexes to go down to the base level. People started enjoying on entertainment and going out. So that way, if you look at it, the 5-day work week we have got adjusted to it. People are okay to shrink or adjust their work schedules between the 5 days. Now, coming to the 4-day part, that's where it can get a little tricky. And like I said, there are possibilities are immense, coming to even a 4-day work week. But like Debjani and then of course Shivani mentioned, most of these organizations did some study. They did some pilot studies, or they ran pilot, I would say, cases where some portion of the organization, some departments ran it on a pilot basis. So only a few employees were involved in those case studies, and they observed if a 4-day week is really going to work and maintain the productivity, the safety aspect that Debjani correctly mentioned. So, that way, if you look at it for the Indian context, um, IT, IT services is one sector, like Shivani mentioned, the entire services industry. I personally feel it is still fairly, we can talk of considering a 4-day week. Okay.
So
But if you look at industries like manufacturing, agriculture, hospitals, um, healthcare, these are some industries that work around the clock. And in a scenario where we talk of the specifically the Indian scenario, a lot of these industries are still governed by the Factories Act. Okay, so there is a lot of compliance factor. There is a lot of labor laws factor that comes into picture. Okay, so there is a certain hour of holidays that a person working in a manufacturing industry can get depending on the hours that the person is putting. Probably say a 48-hour week. If someone is doing a 48 hours, then they get, say, maybe whatever number of hours as a vacation. So we we are in a world today where we are, I would say, we have the privilege today that even we can talk about this topic, and also explore this possibility that there could be a 4-day week. um, so yeah, I mean, from these industries, manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, government might have to pitch in if things have to go in that direction of 4 days a week. I would personally be a little worried for, especially for these industries and the IT services. But I come from a manufacturing background, so I have a bit of a emotion attached to that industry. um, Safety is of paramount importance for these industries. You cannot rush in on any of the activity, and these guys, they work in shifts, right?
So
So uh, already, we are going into a schedule where we are shrinked it from 6 days to 5 days. So everybody is on that round the clock is running behind, in their mind. So yeah, I mean, if we look at it, it is still a possibility. There would be a lot of intervention from the corporations. The organizations will have to show that urge, that they would like to experiment on a pilot basis, at least to see if this is working out. And then the government will have to come in terms of bringing those laws, making sure that the workers, employees are protected, and their mental well-being is in place, because we are thinking of shrinking from 5 days to 4 days. So the working
thank
hours are
you.
going to go more, like Debjani and of course Shivani also highlighted. So yeah, interesting times.
Thank you, Srirang, for that. I remember back in the day when I started my work, I started off as a 6 day work week model. And after 6 months or 8 months, on one Good Friday, there was an announcement that said, by the way, from tomorrow, you get Saturday also as off. And we were definitely excited, the enthusiasm that you were talking about. But I now also understand where you're coming from. 6 day work to 5 day work was easy, but 5 day work to 4 day work can be slightly challenging as well. And I could see Dr. Devjani nodding and completely agreeing with some of the points that you make. So let me redirect the next question to her. Given that some organizations or some countries like Iceland, UK, Japan, etc., they did these experiments and they are successfully able to prove that this is a good way, this is working for them. Are there any lessons that India can learn from these experiments to ensure that we make progress and then we move or consider the 4 day work week?
And absolutely, because when we when we talk about the economy, what we can't overlook also is the fact that something called societal norms or social, the social movement is also very deeply attached to the growth of an economy. Okay, so when I talk about employment safety, better wages, preparedness to support the workforce from extreme stress or long work hours. I'm also talking about the fact that countries like China, for instance, China has gone on record to say that they are beating the US because US is 50% less working than they are. But look at what's happening to the Chinese society. We have more and more nuclear families coming up, which is absolutely alike to what's also happened on the Indian subcontinent. From large traditional families, we are moving into small nuclear families, which obviously necessitates more and more of personal time because now you don't have that support system which you had earlier. Secondly, mothers mothers who could even be single parents, and that's again a phenomena which is on the rise, and I'm forced to bring it to the forefront. Single parents with children, imagine the kind of vagaries they have to go through when they are forced to come into longer hours. They are unable to give they are unable to take the benefit of shorter work weeks, okay, primarily because they have to tend to their flock. At the same time, they have to earn for their livelihood. So there are major aberrations from a social factor. And we have today number of phenomena within the female workforce. We have double income, no kids. We also have, marriages breaking up, women not wanting to have children. Now, these are all the outputs because of this turbulence, which has come in the way of understanding or not understanding what a long versus a short workforce can do to you. So we cannot be at a stage where we can be myopic to look at an economy and the industry in isolation to what's also happening on the other side, which is social urbanization, the way the social syndromes are monitoring, the way they are, basically they're getting more and more stretched at the corners? And are we in a position, therefore, to look at an equilibrium where we are able to give some amount of succor to both the sides? I think these are lessons which we don't have a single country to whom we can look at. Yes, Iceland is a wonderful example of 1% of its workforce, because I heard Shivani say 2,500 was the workforce, and that's 1% of their workforce. And that pilot was with 1%. Could they really go ahead? Today, they are moving slowly to that 86%. But still, there are larger questions about how do you provide mental equilibrium without cutting pay, because there is another side to it, to make sure that profitability is maintained, productivity is maintained, and there is a viable alternative to commercial sustenance. So these are challenges which I'm sure are looming large in front of India too. And that is where I couldn't help but nod my head in complete agreement to some of the points that Srirang brought about. Because, in very simple terms, he showed the mirror that it is easier to propound, but it is very difficult to execute. And there are many challenges around the corner which we need to look at from a 360 degrees in a holistic way, not with blinkers in the eyes. That's what I feel on this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Debjani. You definitely seem very passionate about the overall
I am.
experiment.
I
And
am.
uh, we'll come back to you. We'll pick your brain more. By the way, before we move on to the next question, I'd like to remind our audience that you can also ask questions through chat. We do have set of conversations that we would like to cover to share their opinions, but we'll be addressing any open questions towards the end of that session. So feel free to share your thoughts and queries through the chat option as well. Now, Shivani, I would like to come back to you, thinking about some of the aspects that you shared earlier, as well as what Dr. Debjani was recently, very, previous question talking about the double income, no kids, and nuclear families and marriages, the overall social impact, let's say. But how do you think a 4-day work week could impact productivity from an organization point of view to ensure that we are not missing out on the economy, profits, and the overall sustainability part of it, as well as the employee morale in the Indian organizations? How can we balance that element, and how do you think it could impact? Is there a solution out of that?
I think it's a very relevant question, and you said the right word, balance. Like Devjani said, the countries that have successfully done this started with a very small pilot. So that's probably the first, solution to this. That start small. I think we need to start small, and there are companies which, have started experimenting. For example, Zerodha. We all know Zerodha. They've started experimenting with a shorter work week, and they've sort of seen value in that. So I think a 4-day work week definitely has the potential to sort of positively impact both the productivity and morale in Indian organization, but it would need to be implemented very carefully, and more importantly, contextually. See, in India, we all know burnout levels are very high. In fact, there was a study in 2022, I think, yeah, 22 by Deloitte, which said that 80% of India's workforce is experiencing workplace stress. So giving employees, more personal time can definitely improve the well-being, later to leading to greater, focus, energy, motivation, even with the reduced working days. We all work with Gen Zs. We all have Gen Zs in our offices, and we all know how close is flexibility and autonomy to their heart. We all know that this is a generation that really values work-life balance, that really values their own personal time. In fact, there was a LinkedIn poll in 2023 which showed that over 75% of this category supported the idea of a 4-day work week. Uh, but of course, there are challenges, and I think I've spoken about those challenges earlier. There's only one thing that I'd like to add here, that looking at the West, they are significantly developed economies. India is still a developing economy, and we're a fast developing economy. We're already the fifth largest economy in the world, and we are, finding a way up. So when you're a part of a growing economy, of course, the kind of work and the efforts that are required are more as compared to the other companies. It's like other countries. It's like, it's like a large organization, a large, stable, well-developed organization versus a startup. So in a large organization where you have all the systems, all processes, everything working out well for you, you have a fixed revenue, you have a clear vision, you have everything working for you. You can think of a 5-day work week. But if you look at startups, if you look at companies that are still finding their way up, uh, most of them would have a 6-day work week, not because of anything else, but because it's the it's the nature of the work that they're in. So keeping that in mind, I think it is going to be slightly challenging for us to sort of implement this in a full-fledged way. I've already talked about the cultural mindset. I think that's the big one again. The belief of number of hours is equal to hard work. That mindset definitely needs to change, because we do tend to equate somebody sitting late in office with somebody being more competent, with them being more competent, being more committed, being more engaged with the organization. I think that's a very, very prevalent mindset in the corporates today also. And of course, there are sector limitations. We've already spoken about, Shirang spoke about it. I've mentioned it earlier. Easier to implement in IT, in marketing, in knowledge-based companies, but very hard to do in manufacturing, in retail, public services. So of course, there will be challenges, especially in client-facing and operations-heavy sectors. But even there, I think the key is that we start the experiment on a more of a rotational or a hybrid model. So, and more importantly, I think if Indian companies can shift the focus from clocking hours to delivering results, I think the 4-day work week can actually be piloted and used to enhance performance.
Thank you, Shivani. Really appreciate that. While you were talking about the technology adoption, I could also think about the significant prediction that Bill Gates made last week. I believe it was their 50th Microsoft anniversary. All the three giants were there. He recently predicted that advancements in AI definitely could reduce the overall standard work week to 2 days, but it could take about a decade for us to do that. I know right now it appears like a decade, but before you blink a couple of times, I'm sure time flies, and we might be, in the race to make that happen as well. But he was primarily envisioning AI and technology like that to lessen the human labor needs, particularly in sectors like healthcare or education and IT. And this idea of 2-day work week definitely can be revolutionary and drastically change how we approach the work as well. But for the next question in relation to that, Srirang, let me come back to you. Preparing for a shift to shorter work weeks, I know we're definitely talking about a lot of challenges, the mindset, and everything else that has to fall in place for us to move to that. But including the adoption of technology or significant changes in organizational structure as well as the culture and mindset, how can Indian companies start preparing for a future with this mindset, with the future shorter work weeks in mind?
Yeah, thank you again, Vivek. So I would like to refer again to the first question that I was addressing. Um, and, uh, you know, until the introduction of IT in India, we were used to a 6-day work, right? 1 day
True.
off, 6 days work, right? And the possibility of the work that can happen in 5 days happened because of a external intervention. We were naturally not thinking or inclining towards a 5-day work week, because that is how our industry was. And like Shivani also mentioned, today we are a very fast developing country. But back in those days, the situation was much different. The workforce was smaller, opportunities were lesser. With the introduction of IT, certainly these possibilities look very possible. That said, and I'll give an example of a company I worked in Mumbai in 98 till 2000. Okay, it was a US manufacturing company. And I was extremely surprised to say they had a 5-day work week then in Mumbai.
Wow.
It was a glass manufacturing plant. Imagine glass manufacturing, it's a continuous process. You cannot stop in between, right?
Mhm.
So, but the way they had designed the system, they got everything, the settled, stable processes from their um, West, I mean, like the US and Europe practices, they got it in India and they made it possible. So the shift timings did not change. The shift timings remained as 8 hours, but the larger workforce was required. You get it? So for the same job, they needed more people to do it because the work week was shrink to 5 days a week. Now, on the same model, gradually, I saw that later on that most of the manufacturing companies started feeling that yes, this is possible in India. I'm talking about, okay, and then they started working around, okay, how we can get it done. So the buy-in for the leadership for most of the organizations happened with a external influx, that somebody did it, it was a proven model, and then the Indian companies started to study it, research it, and experiment if that can be possible for an Indian scenario. So to start with, for any a 4-day week, to say, the need would also come from a buy-in from the leadership. So we have all these tall leaders, in India, big honchos who are today debating on whether we should really go for a 4-day week, especially for an Indian scenario, right? And they could be right. They are seeing a picture at a very higher level, especially for an Indian context. Okay.
Sure.
So from that perspective, I think if the leadership buy-in is there, a small pilot basis, we can initiate something and see and experience if those pilot cases are coming out successful. Okay. That said, it is much easier to do. I would say easier when I say it's probably manageable in AI. I mean, with IT and IT services. Manufacturing, I am still a bit doubtful. I would be very cautious again from the safety perspective. Debjani raised some real good points that are happening today in the Indian households. With people, we say with 5-day work week, we have achieved a work-life balance, but in fact, it has actually messed a little bit with our lives because we are trying to finish our work, finish our job in those 5 days. Now Shivani also mentioned most of the workforce is now required to go back to office, even if it is a hybrid. Imagine in 4 days you have to finish a work for 5 days, right? So
Sure.
it's going to put a lot of mental pressure. People will be, the clock will be running behind them, and in that pressure, people, there will be mental well-being will come into picture. So to summarize, basically, if the leadership seems okay to experiment, to see it as a possibility, it can start at a pilot basis, at a small group level, a very small group. Like Shivani also mentioned, for the studies that were done in Europe for a workforce of 2,500, and then Debjani also joined into it, that for that workforce it looked possible, but it became a successful pilot case study, right? Which is why we are talking today, that someone has done it before and they achieved success. So yeah, probably doing a little bit on the pilot basis and checking the results might probably give us better understanding of the 5-day work 4-day work week.
Wonderful, Srirang. Somebody has to believe it, and it has to start small. It has to start somewhere. So let's hope that we'll be able to initiate those pilot experiments as well. I also see I am comfortable with 0 days week as well, as long as I get the results kind of chat conversation happening on the side, which is definitely the mindset that we are tuning into, which is very interesting. But let me flip the coin, and Devjani, I do want your opinion on this question specifically. Moonlighting has become a concern in some markets since the pandemic, given that people were working from home, especially the IT and ITES, people who typically work with computers in home using the laptop and internet, etc. And it could be an issue with the adoption of shorter work weeks as well. But what are the potential side effects? This can be only an example for us to get the thought flowing. But what are some of the potential side effects of the 4-day work week, such as moonlighting or anything else that can be mitigated as we prepare for that mode? Devjani, you are on mute.
So sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I'll just say that a disclaimer first. that, enough has been spoken about moonlighting is bad, moonlighting is wrong, moonlighting is unethical. Why does it have to be there? And how can an employee actually look for, supplementary economy and two ways of earning an income, so much and so forth. But I'd just like to say that, come COVID and come the pandemic, with the way it spread across the global economies, a lot of families, a lot of bread earners were perhaps left with not too many options, but to go and look for such things, because overnight you were left stranded on the streets. You had no income. Okay. Shops and companies were shutting down. Now, what would you do? I mean, you would obviously want to find another alternative. And that's possibly how something like a moonlighting, when me as an employee suddenly realized that my company was about to shut down, even while I was in employment and I was serving whatever time I had in that place, started looking actively for something else which could sustain me further. So there started the whole phenomena of, can I have two incomes instead of one? Because I was never too sure about when one of them would actually fall off the rudder. Now, by definition, moonlighting has its, has its strenuous ways of work pattern, because it means that it's no longer just one employment, but there are two employments now which are putting pressure on the amount of time which you have at your disposal for work, right? Now, even with one income, moonlighting is blamed, because there are concerns with productivity, there are concerns with, are you able to actually balance between two incomes or two employments? There are ethical concerns, there are legal considerations, there are all kinds of time management challenges. And that happens even with the normal scenario. Okay. And by normal, I mean a 70 to 90, which is what we are mostly, okay, in that kind of an paradigm. Now, a shift in paradigm, and we come down to a 40 to 50 kind of a work hour. What does it do? It just collapses your time frame even further. It just brings that level of stress on you again. You're, after all, that one single human resource. But now, within that restricted time frame, there are demands from you, not from one employer but two. And there could be competition. It could be that both your employers could be competitors, which puts another set of incumbent questions, that whether are you sharing, are you soliciting, are you actually, there could be plenty of downsides to it. Now, my point is, I don't want to value judge somebody for moonlighting, but I know for a fact that even with one employment, people don't know how to balance the work life, the hours that they have to put in, whether we go from a longer to a shorter, and how we bring about better workforce management techniques, how do we bring about better usage of technology and automation. There are so many larger than life questions which are already staring at us. On top of that, moonlighting, two employers now, and I actually have to deal with shorter work hours. For me, that's not a very comfortable situation, and more the propensity to go wrong, if you know what I mean. So, am I
Yeah.
going to be therefore fair to myself? Will I be able to sustain that kind of a lifestyle? Am I going to be able to be fair to both my employers, and etc., etc.? It's a very large question.
Thank you, Debjani. I know we normally talk about the organizational perspective and then say the employee of a particular organization, should they be involved or doing moonlighting, let's say. But typically, we do not think too much in terms of the overall context, which kind of drove them to take decisions like that, and which was a necessity for many to ensure that they have some income for them to continue their livelihood as well. With that, I'm trying to look at the chat window to see if they have any questions. Anybody from the audience? Looks like we do not have any questions. But let me pass it on to you one last time, each of you, in 60 seconds. If you have to share any closing comments on the topic that we talked about, Shivani, what would you say?
Well, I think a lot has been discussed today. So, if I was to, share my closing thought, it would be very revolutionary if we were able to do this. But I think it's quite a challenging and a daunting task, at least for the Indian companies to start doing it. I think the biggest change that is required is a mindset change in the leadership. On one side, we are talking about 70-hour and 90-hour work weeks. From there, transitioning into a 4-day work week is quite a mammoth of a journey. And that journey is not going to be easy. So the managers, in fact, the leadership in majority of the companies needs to be trained or coached on having a mindset shift from monitoring time to actually tracking results. There's a whole lot of difference between the two. And I think if you're able to do that, it's a long journey, of course, but if you're able to do that, only then we can think of, having a 4-day work week. Automation, of course, is the key. Um, there is no other way, to make this a success unless and until we really ace the automation part to be able to, implement this effectively. And I think the only way to go about it is start small, like the way other countries. I think it's a learning from other countries that start small. Start with a pilot. If you really want to do it in your organization, start with a small group of employees who are, probably not in customer facing roles, and who can probably sustain this kind of a work week. But make sure that if you are giving 4-day work weeks to people, you don't give them work which is equivalent to 7 days. That is not fair. That is absolutely not fair. So in the
Thank
garb of 4 days work week, in the garb of employee well-being, in the garb of caring for employees, let's not overload them with work which is equivalent to 7 days. Yeah, so those are my closing thoughts.
Thank you, Shivani. Thanks a lot. Srirang, 60 seconds or less. Any closing comments from you?
Yeah, Vivek, thank you again. Um, I I feel like these are possible times. Like I've said before, we moved from 6 days to 5 days, so 4-day week could be a possibility. Some companies, some countries may start it. It may become a revolution, like Shivani mentioned. Um, my only concern, or couple of concerns rather, is that we have multiple industries in India, right? I would be little worried in terms of the disparity. Today, someone working, say, in a IT services can still feel it as a possibility that I may work only for 4 days, right? But for someone who's working on agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare industry, it looks a very remote possibility. And look at what will happen to those sectors, because people will stop going to those sectors. They will feel that I'm getting a 4-day work week at some other industry. Let me take that job. And these industries are paying well, right? So that managing that disparity will become a huge task for organizations, especially manufacturing organizations. So that is one part. I am not sure how it is going to work out. Secondly is also the factor of hourly rates. For IT services, especially services, it's written here, it's hourly rate. So eh, we, everyone is looked at that aspect, and with the shrinking hours, companies, people don't realize it, but they will be under tremendous pressure to deliver more in less time. And that probably can get situations into messy. We are talking of mental well-being and all. That said, I don't mind, having it on a pilot basis, on a small basis. Let it continue for some time and see how the results are coming up. And yeah, like these are all possibilities. We are in a possibility scenario right now, in a possible environment. If we came from 6 to 5 days, there is no reason why we cannot come to 4 days week, but with caution. Thank you.
Thank you, Srirang. Thanks a lot. I know we have only 1 minute. Dr. Devjani, any closing comments from you?
I'll keep it very short. I'll echo two things which my very eminent panelists spoke about and which touched my heart. Shivani spoke about don't track the hours but track the outcome, which I think is a very, very important measure. Sriram talks about taking care of disparity. And we should not get into something whereby people start looking against going into one sector at the cost of another? I think these are very large questions, which only brings home my point that who doesn't want a shorter work week? I think all of us would love it. But bring it on not as a knee jerk reaction. Don't bring it on as something which is a half baked reaction to a situation. Bring it on with adequate thought leadership. Bring it on with purpose and intent of creating the right kind of protection, support, and endearment for the workforce which has to carry it on their shoulder. That's the only way we can make a success out of it. We are champions who will continue to cheer for it, but only if it is done in the right way. And that is probably the need of the hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Devjani. And thank you, Shivani, as well as Srirang too. Thank you very much for throwing some light. And this is definitely a multifaceted and requires careful consideration of various factors. We have been talking about culture, productivity, well-being, mindset, and cost, etc. But we hope today's discussion has provided the audience with a little bit deeper understanding of the overall global scenario and the lessons that we can learn to apply this in our Indian context as well. Sincere apologies for not leaving a lot of time, Faisal, but thank you very much again for inviting us and putting this together. Over to you to officially close this webinar.
Faisal,
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to Vivek for excellent moderation. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Echo
Vivek.
same thoughts. Thank you,
It was
Vivek.
really very well moderated. Yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks a lot. Means a big deal for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Faisal,
Sure.
all yours.
Yeah. Heartfelt thank you to Vivek for your expert facilitation. Your guidance brought both energy and depth to the discussion, steering it with great clarity and focus. Grateful appreciation to Shivani, Dr. Devjani, and Shriram for sharing your insightful perspectives and thoughtful contributions. Your time and effort made this session truly impactful. Looking forward to many more enriching and engaging conversations ahead. For those eager to revisit today's insights, the session recording is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. A special thanks to our event partners Geisha, NASCOM COE, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local Ahmedabad and India for their invaluable support in making this event a success. To learn more about these associations, please refer to the link provided in the chat. We look forward to welcoming you in our next session on the topic Gen Z's expectations from workplaces, flexibility, purpose, and perks on April 17, 2025. With that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Wishing you good health, positivity, and success until we meet again. Take care and farewell for now. Thank you. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Faisal.
Thank
much.
everyone.
you. Yeah.
Bye
Have a
Thank
bye.
great
you.
day.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.